Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is November 2nd, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. So for this afternoon, what I am going to do is talk to you about a project that I am engaging in at present, and that involves my own personal drive to transition away from a lifestyle that produces carbon emissions to a lifestyle that greatly reduces carbon emissions, but also incentivizes solutions to climate change by using my purchasing power and my action as an individual to send a signal, or to send as much of a signal to the global market as possible. Now, at present, I know I don't usually talk about myself, but one of the things that has really made me rather annoyed and at times upset is the fact that if I wish to live in modern society and participate in modern society, then many of the choices that I make result in carbon emissions. So, for example, if I want to have access to transportation, most of those choices involve a transportation source that produces carbon emissions. If I wish to heat my house, for example, many of those choices involve choices that produce impacts that worsen human-caused climate change. And it's due to the fact that many of us are captive consumers of fossil fuels because fossil fuels are the easiest source of energy to access for many of us, and that social systems and government systems have not really provided enough of a pathway for people like me and you to easily access those clean energy sources and reduce your carbon emissions on a rapid basis. Now, of course, we could all just stop using energy and go out and live in the woods, and at great risk to our own selves and our livelihoods and ourselves as a person, reduce our carbon emissions to zero and probably have a lifespan that equals maybe about 40 years, because you also don't access medicine, which also relies on electricity and is very energy intensive. So you can make that choice, but that choice for an individual is one that is very hard to make, and one that results in a serious and severe sacrifice to not only your quality of life, but likely how long you're going to live. And so that choice, let's just put that choice aside and say that the choice we want to make are choices that do not harm ourselves as individuals, but that do help to solve the problem of human-caused climate change by sending a signal to the political system and the human economic systems that it's not okay to produce produce carbon emissions and put us on this path of climate destruction, and that we demand transformation. We demand a different future from the past, which has contributed so much harm to the global system. Now, I've talked a lot about clean energy as a solution for human-caused climate change in the form of wind, solar, electric vehicles, batteries, and as transforming what is a systemic problem. I've also talked a bit about how because human-caused climate change is a systemic problem, our most effective actions are on a mass scale or a group scale action, primarily helping to support politicians and leaders, not just in the political field, but in the economic field, who promote solutions to climate change and who promote policies that are going to make it easier for you and me to access solutions to climate change, access clean energy, right? The thing is, that we can act also as an individual, not just in the form of voting and supporting leaders and climate leaders like, for example, Democrat Jerry Brown in California, or Elon Musk on the corporate side, or Bill McKibben's 350.org on the climate activism side, or the Sierra Club, for example, the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign. But what we can also do is look at our individual carbon emissions and look at how we can reduce those. And one of the ways we can do that is with diet. A lot of people talk about being a vegan and how that's important. And my wife and I, we're both vegan, and she works for an all vegetarian vegan nonprofit, and we've changed our diet, and that does reduce our individual carbon emissions by a bit. But in order to further reduce our individual carbon emissions, we really need to start accessing clean energy. And so what I am doing in my spare time, which I don't have a lot of, and because I am not a very wealthy individual, is at present I am doing Rideshare, and I am saving the money from Rideshare for a Tesla Model 3. And once I get the Tesla Model 3, I'm going to continue to do Rideshare because that will allow me to provide others with access to clean energy, a clean energy system in the form of a Tesla Model 3 who wouldn't otherwise have access to that vehicle. Now, why am I doing this? Well, let's look at some facts. Now, the first fact is that the average corporate fuel efficiency for a vehicle in the United States is around 24 miles per gallon, and that directly relates to carbon emissions. The average mile per gallon equivalent for a person living in my area for an electric vehicle, when linked directly to the grid, is 75 miles per gallon. So you get about So you end up with about a third of the carbon emissions from operating an electric vehicle from the grid in my region, which is the Washington, D.C. metro region. Now, the other thing is that an electric vehicle in operation, if you link it to, say, for example, solar-based energy, produces zero carbon emissions in use. The only carbon emissions for that vehicle come from the manufacturing process. In total, over the lifespan, that reduces the electric vehicle's carbon emission by about 90%. So the first step would be to get an all-clean energy vehicle and reduce my carbon emissions by about 70% in that step. And the second step would be to have access to solar energy for charging, reducing my vehicle-based carbon emissions by 90%, and then through Rideshare to allow others to access that reduction in carbon emissions as well, and ultimately to share in the Rideshare program that Tesla is launching, which enables me to loan out my Tesla to other drivers without having them have the need to purchase a Tesla, and also have access to a clean energy vehicle. So I just want to look at some facts and look at some trends with regard to this individual ambition. Now, looking at electric vehicle emissions in my region, the average versus a fossil fuel-based vehicle. So the average carbon emission from a fossil fuel-based vehicle in my zip code is 381 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per mile. And the average carbon emission from using a Model 3 when it's plugged into the grid is 107 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per mile. So that's more than a 75% reduction in total carbon emissions just by switching to my present fossil fuel-based vehicle to an all-electric Model 3. Now, I did want to point out a couple of other things as well. I did talk about Rideshare, and it does appear that Tesla right now has the ambition to produce its own share service through its thrust for automation. Now, automation is difficult, and Tesla has hit a number of roadblocks when it comes to fully automating its vehicles. And the big issue for Tesla, of course, will be whether or not governments allow fully automated vehicles to drive themselves on the highways and streets of the United States. And I think that there are two major hurdles here. One being the technological hurdle, which is really difficult in a way that actually produces full autonomy. Full autonomy is a very difficult hurdle to hit. But in addition, the social and political hurdle of getting acceptance of fully autonomous vehicles driving on the highways and roads of the U.S. will also likely be a rather difficult hurdle, as people might feel a little bit odd about just self-driving vehicles tooling around. That said, if I do own a Tesla, it will allow me to voluntarily access this program, which would let me share my vehicle with others and share access to a clean energy-based system to others, thus multiplying my impact and my reduction for carbon emissions, not just for myself, but for the people that share the vehicle. Now, the other final point that I would like to share is that if I do this, if I'm able to achieve, one, getting enough money to purchase a Model 3, and two, providing this rideshare service to my friends and family and to the people who live in my community, I will also pledge never to support an automaker that produces fossil fuel-based vehicles again. And that's just as a goal for myself and as part of my personal morality and as sending a signal to automakers that I don't want to support you if you are producing internal combustion engine-based vehicles. I don't think there's a future in that, and there certainly isn't a livable climate future in that. And I personally think that Tesla's model of an all-clean energy-based corporation is a moral choice, but it's also a choice that sustains the future of human civilization into the long term and gives us a pathway to not only a livable future, but a prosperous future. And if you look at the facts, that's just simply the truth. And if you look at the facts, it makes sense to make the decision that I am making as well. So I just wanted to let you know that the reason why I haven't had the opportunity to produce as many video blogs is because I am out there doing the rideshare thing and saving up money for a Tesla so I can have some individual impact. But I also just want my statement to serve as a bit of a line in the sand, at least from this consumer, or so-called consumer, and use as a message to major automakers, you better get your act together, because I'm not the only one out there who feels this way. Other people are going to see this video. The people will react to it in their own various ways, and a number of people will take what I'm doing and do it as well. And in addition, I already know of a number of drivers who rideshare with Tesla and who not only have transitioned to a clean energy-based vehicle, but are working to multiply their own clean energy impact in partnership with Tesla and in partnership with rideshare and in their own communities. So we're working for this clean energy future. You can be a part of it, or you can be left behind. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.